Hello, biological anthropology students. In this segment of Module 1, we're going to be exploring what is science and how we can define life scientifically. I used to throw out a question out there, and by mistake, I should never have done this to my first classes. And I would ask them, what is life? And I always get somebody, is like a box of chocolates. No, like, no. I figure out a better response than something like that. This thing that you have that constitutes you, this thing called life, is something that you share with 14,441,900 other species on this planet. That's at least the total that we have right now. And this thing called life has some great commonalities. And the commonalities is that we can describe it and define it and even measure it scientifically. So we'll be doing that in this segment. But first we got to figure out what science is and what's the process. Now, science in itself is something that can be understood, I think, a little better when we actually know the history of how people think. I mean, the change in thoughts and when it's actually occurred. So in a PowerPoint presentation, which will appear right below this introductory video, I'm going to give you a little rough outline of the history of science. And it is a very short, truncated outline because of the cast and characters of those that have contributed to science are into the thousands. I'm going to hit some of the main things, the main take-homes. And I want you to the big impact that I want you to have is that the origins of science aren't clearly what we think they are. They do not have a Latin, Roman, Greco sort of origins whatsoever. They're actually Middle Eastern and to the great Islamic empires that existed before they were wiped out during the Crusades. So we'll be looking at the origins of science and how science was lost and how it was reclaimed in Western Europe. And who was it that actually reclaimed it? And what was that history? And after that, I think hopefully you'll have a little appreciation of how much we actually need to protect it. Because I'll tell you, it is the only way to wheedle fact from fiction. So, one of the things that I want to set you up for when I talk about wheedling fact from fiction there's a word that's going to appear many times, and though I am going to define it, I kind of want to put it in a better context. Real, knowable, definable facts, as we discovered by science, which is evidence based, are things you can touch and taste and sense through instrumentation, right? Things that we know are real. And then we have the other types of facts, and those are called social facts. And those are the ones in which we create and that we tell each other over and over and over again to where they actually receive an air of factuality. And in fact, the air of factuality seems so genuine that anybody who goes against the known sort of grain is considered afactual. And that's what you're actually getting right now. And during these times, if you're watching this during the periods of COVID, you're seeing this great argument between the scientific facts and those that want the facts to be something else because there are alternative issues or interests involved. Well, in science, we're not worried about this side, the social facts. That's not it. This is something that we kind of ignore, and we only pay attention to the real facts. We don't want to become enemies of the society because we think social facts will do that eventually. They'll collapse society. It's the real facts that uphold things. So there is a demeanor to science and scientists that we deal with truth, on a definable, knowable sort of basis. Um, so that will begin this tome. All right. So in this section, there are a couple of things that need to be done. Not only the PowerPoint, there is a paper that I have in here, and you'll see a link to it below, and it's called The Development of Sciences by Peter Price. This one, actually, the first 3 or 4 pages is very good. And then he goes into sort of this big sort of like all these examples, these examples we're using. Once you sort of get the drift about what science is, you don't really need to go to all the examples. Unless you love his writing, then I invite you to complete the whole thing. But I know during courses like this, which are very short, time is of the essence. So get to the first part of it, sort of see how he defines what science is and some of the relevant history, then sort of all the lengthy discussions towards the end. You can let them go because you'll never see all of that stuff on an exam. I'll guarantee you. All right. Now, next is the section on how we're going to define life scientifically. Through that, I'm going to give you to watch an amazing video, and it's called Wonders of Life. What is life? And this was produced by one of my favorite scientists and actually band members, Brian Cox. He teaches at the University of Manchester, Professor Brian Cox. Amazing individual. Um, He's a physicist, classic physicist, who's very interested in life, right? So in this film, he tracks the elemental processes of life and what is life, utilizing some of the basic principles of physics and thermodynamics, and he presents it in a very easy to understand sort of way. Now, what I'm going to do is not in this particular segment, but as we start the next segment going into Darwin and Darwinism, I'm actually going to open up my first introduction, like I'm doing today, with sort of a summary in what you saw with Cox. So I want you to finish that viewing before you go on to the next one to see if you derived out of what's in that film out of what I saw and the important sort of aspects of it. All right, so let's get to work, and I'll talk to you after you finish this segment. Bye.